Hi, my name is Chris Bailey and I am a business development manager at Specific. There are a number of us, but I focus on particularly on West Wales and the Valley's SMEs interaction with Specific, which is something I can come on to later. I consider myself a knowledge broker, I suppose. The idea being that I sit at the interface of business and academia, developing and promoting engagement opportunities that are both based on the current needs of business and of Specific's needs in terms of research areas and innovation. We have core research areas, so we're looking at printed PV, solar thermal, interseasonal heat storage, electrical storage, which is batteries, electric vehicles. We've got interest in building energy systems and smart energy, thermoelectric devices, decarbonisation as an overarching theme there, and industrial coatings for things like our heated floor and a number of other things. We have a number of demonstrated buildings as well. So the active classroom and the active office being two of the sort of key ones, if you like, the most recent developments, which have multiple systems, active building systems, all under one roof. So we've got generation or capture technologies, storage technologies and release technologies that are all complementary and work to a sort of low carbon, low cost, solar driven system. And we're also then sort of partnered, strategic partners, being Tata Steel. Obviously steel on the buildings and the cladding and the coatings that are put on them are very much of interest to what we do. AkzoNobel for paint and materials coatings then, and formulating and developing those, and NSG Pilkington for glass, again another substrate on which these technologies are often laid, and we've incorporated those technologies into the buildings fundamentally as part of the design and development processes. Specific works with obviously a number of businesses across a wide variety of sectors. The idea being that we are funded to work with businesses. We have core funding that allows us to support and work with businesses across Wales and across the UK. So if you can have a look at our website, www.specific.eu.com, and look at the Working Together page, where you can find case studies and examples of the things that we do and have done for businesses and for other organisations. In reality, that can be a wide number of things, but it can be anything from feasibility studies, technology demonstrations, working on technology scale up and development, de-risking, that for industry. But we can also work on research in particular. So there's opportunities for sponsorship and for long-term commitment, if you like, to very particular research in an area of the business's interest. And then the other things that we can do really are things like bidding for funding, competitive funding, research funding, where we wouldn't necessarily lead, but the business might lead or would have to lead the funding in some cases, and we can support you or them to do that because we have bid writing experience, we know the sector, we have technical capability that can lend something to a project like that. One of the challenges, I suppose, of lockdown for universities in general and for Specific has been around not having access to labs, for instance. It's very difficult for teams that rely on that. But the research teams here at Specific have been able to kind of adapt to that and have been busy writing papers and working from home, like the rest of us, and being able to do desk-based research. We've also hosted a number of webinars, so two in particular that had over 200 attendees in total, looking at our active buildings. We did a tour using a virtual platform called Matterport, which we luckily were able to get done in time to be able to deliver that during lockdown. And then one of the main kind of projects that we've been able to do during this period has been a hand sanitizer project, where we were able to repurpose our facilities to manufacture hand sanitizer for the NHS and the public sector businesses and organisations in Wales. And one of the other things as well, then, we have a number of projects obviously that have had to change tack in order to stay busy, and one of those was the TFW shelter project. So that there was some challenges in terms of the fact we couldn't have contractors coming to site and things like that, so we were able to focus on the desk-based research. But finally we're at a point now where we can get that moving again, and we'll be able to install screens that we've been waiting to install and actually finish the structure of that, which we can talk about in a bit more detail afterwards. Specific has a project with TFW, Transport for Wales, Welsh Government, and we have partnered with them to investigate the opportunity for off-grid rail waiting structures or shelters, with a view to kind of proving the concept, basically. So it's not something that's been done or utilised in rail before. There's a lot of challenges to doing it, and obviously it has to be safe, and it has to provide consistent quality of service, consistency of service throughout wherever it's applied. So the idea being that you could install our active building technologies, PV batteries, and then energy efficient devices in order to provide the core services that are required of something like a waiting shelter on a platform. The benefit then being that obviously it's low carbon, is that you're not burning fossil fuel to provide energy for running those services, albeit they're quite small. But there's also the fact that you minimize disruption in terms of installation. So you're not digging up the platform to run power cables and things like that. And this is particularly useful for platforms, maybe more rural areas where the current services are poor and historical. And that by adding these technologies and by doing it in such a light touch way, that would drastically improve the quality of service for the customer, the consumer, if you like, the person travelling on TFW services down the line. A chance to scale that up across Wales and the UK, in particular TFW in a unique position in UK and Wales, in that they have taken ownership of a portion of track from Network Rail and will be the network operator for a small portion of track in Wales, which potentially gives them a bit more leeway in terms of innovation and demonstrator projects like this. So there's scope to install these shelters across stations in Wales, and obviously, if successful, further afield. This was a good example where we worked with a business called Naked Energy. They were and are a startup company that have rapidly expanded. Their technology is something called the Virtue and Virtue PVT. So it's basically a combination solar thermal PV device, which is based in a tube. So it's an evacuated tube which has PV inside of it as well, basically, and it's a very visually, very aesthetically pleasing device, but it's also incredibly, efficient and does exactly what it's meant to do. When it was installed on the Active Office, it was something they had not installed commercially. The PVT version of it, in particular, they'd done a thermal only version elsewhere, but the PVT version was the first installation of its kind. And gave the company an opportunity to demonstrate that technology in a lower risk scenario where we're expectant of some teething problems, and we're able to help the company, support them to work through that and develop the product, and report back on its performance and how best to integrate it with other systems in the building. And it's now very much a functional part of that building and providing a significant amount of heating. It's a just under 10 kilowatt peak thermal system and a 2.4 kilowatt peak PV system in one. And the critical part of that is it's installed on the south-facing facade of the building, not on the roof. So you're functionalizing a facade of the building that otherwise would be inert and not generating any energy for the building. So that's really the unique offering of a product like that. Obviously, a significant portion of our funding comes from the Welsh European Funding Office through the European Regional Development Fund. That funding allows us to support businesses in an area known as West Wales and the Valleys. That's not just South Wales, that is across all of Wales, but not counting some of the more defined prosperous areas in Wales. So we can, the benefit of that funding means that we, in our support that we provide to those businesses in that area, there may be no direct costs to the business because our time, if you like, the available resource is funded already. But what we look to derive from that is impact. So we're looking to see that the business becomes successful as a result of the support that we provide. So be that through job creation or new products or services that they develop. And the impact and the financial benefit that brings to the local economy in the area is the indicator that we're working to increase. So, we're not financially motivated in any way through that. What we're really trying to see is that the people and the businesses we support become financially and business successful, and also, indirectly and directly are able to support, decarbonisation agenda, environmental sustainability and circular economy, and all of those things that we're so passionate about become impact and outcomes of those projects. One of the other options for working and collaborating with university is to sponsor an individual or a number of individuals to do research on your behalf on an area of interest that's very unique to your business. And this can be done through a number of channels, but two of the core ones that we look at are KTP, which is a knowledge transfer partnership, or an ENGD, so an engineering doctorate. And those two mechanisms allow us to have an individual based in specific or in Swansea University who is able to take a topic of your interest and really focus on developing a solution to something, or really refining a process, or coming up with new ways of doing things, innovation in general, which is what we're here to do. And that's funded through your business. The biggest challenge to achieving net zero is a difficult one because there's so many different parts to the system, but in reality it's probably decarbonisation of heat. We focused for a long time on generating energy, decarbonising electricity, but that now becomes kind of hand in hand with heat. And I think electrification of heating is one part of that, where we're seeing everything move to electrified systems, but as good as that is, it's not the whole puzzle. And we have area of research in the university in specific for interseasonal heat storage, which it seems not a lot of people know what that area of research looks at, but it's maybe the missing piece of the puzzle if it can be refined and developed enough to be commercially ready, and that's what we're working on. So one of our senior sort of TTF researchers, John Elvins, leads a group looking at interseasonal heat storage, and here we work with a material called SIM, which is salt in matrix, and basically that material is able to store energy from the summer and make it available for reuse in the winter. And that is huge in terms of in general. We've talked about these things before, but the difficulty is that we have so much generation capability in the summer from PV or from solar thermal technologies or whatever technology it is that we're demonstrating. We generate more energy than we need in the summer. So the missing piece is, can we take that excess energy and save it for the winter when we need it most? And this material allows that to happen. In terms of up and coming technologies then, solar technologies or energy technologies, there's obviously a massive number of things being developed all at once, and we look to try and at least investigate as many of them as we can. And one of the things that's come up recently is something called bifacial solar panels, so PV panels. it's not complex in the sense that it utilizes existing technology, but it just takes the application to another level. And we haven't actually looked at or demonstrated this technology yet, so it's something that I will be investigating further. But the idea being that you have a solar panel, a PV solar panel that has solar cells on the underside as well as on the top. And that seems counterintuitive, but when you look into it, it starts to make sense, especially when you consider how much reflective energy is wasted. The idea being that these panels in certain scenarios can be up to 50% more efficient than traditional solar panels. So if you can find a suitable application for them, and if you've got a white roof on an industrial building, for instance, then that might be quite a good scenario to install something like a bifacial panel, where you could hugely increase your output if that's what you need for the same amount of space that you've got. So that's something that I will be looking at more in the near future. So thank you for listening, and I hope that some of the information here has been interesting and useful, and you've been able to learn a bit more about Specific and what we do, and maybe it's sort of inspired you to get in touch. And if you want to get in touch, you can get in touch using this information here. Feel free to email, find our social media pages, and look at our website, where there you'll find a number of case studies and more of a breakdown of the research areas that we're involved in and our demonstrated buildings and so forth. Thank you.